The Pear of Anguish was one of the most cruel instruments of torture in Europe between the 16th and 17th centuries. Created at a time when pain was used as a form of punishment and confession, it symbolized the sadism and brutality of medieval methods. The device was shaped like a metallic pear, composed of 3 or 4 steel segments that opened outward via a crank located at the end. Its operation was simple and terrifying. The torturer would insert the device into the victim's body, through the mouth, vagina, or anus, depending on the accusation, and slowly turn the crank. As the mechanism was activated, the metal segments would expand, tearing internal tissues and causing deep wounds and severe bleeding. In more elaborate versions, the inner tips were sharpened or equipped with hooks to rip flesh even further, making the suffering almost indescribable. Its use varied according to the crime. When inserted in the mouth, it targeted those accused of lying, blasphemy, or heresy. For women, it was applied vaginally as punishment for adultery or witchcraft. In the anus, it was aimed at men accused of sodomy or treason. The effect was devastating. Tissues were internally shredded, blood flowed, and the victim could go into shock, agonizing for hours or even days. Often, the goal was not immediate death, but the infliction of maximum pain and public humiliation before death. It was both a physical and psychological torture. The Pear of Anguish was mainly used during the Inquisition, when the Catholic Church and secular courts employed extreme methods to extract confessions. During interrogations, the mere sight of the metal device served as a threat. Many confessed to crimes just to avoid the torment. There are no precise official records of how many were tortured with it, but historical accounts mention its use in prisons and torture chambers in countries such as France, Germany, Spain, and Italy. The instrument had specific versions. The oral pear was smaller and designed to tear the mouth and break teeth. The vaginal version was more elongated, intended to rip internal genital organs. The anal pear was narrower, penetrating deeper and opening slowly, destroying muscles and internal organs. Sometimes the torturer would turn the crank slowly to prolong suffering. Other times it was turned quickly, causing immediate and violent tearing. Regardless of speed, the result was the same: extreme pain, bleeding, and slow death. The motivation behind tortures like this was control and intimidation. Authorities saw suffering as a form of purification of the soul, believing physical pain could extract the truth. This mindset meant instruments like the Pear of Anguish were used without mercy, legitimized by religious beliefs and the pursuit of power. The body was destroyed, but the aim was to break the mind as well. The victim knew that any resistance would only prolong their agony. Most disturbing is that, despite its simplicity, the Pear of Anguish was deliberately designed to cause maximum pain without causing immediate death. The cold metal, the sound of its gears, and the executioner's complete control created a scenario of absolute terror. Many prisoners fainted before the torture even began. Others died days later from infection or shock. There was no compassion or anesthesia. The pain itself was the spectacle. Some versions were even decorated with small engravings, such as crosses or religious inscriptions, making the contrast even more cruel. Faith and torture were intertwined in the same object. The Pear of Anguish was not only a physical weapon, but also a symbol of power. It represented the idea that the human body could be violated and destroyed in the name of morality, faith, or justice. Over the centuries, the use of such instruments was gradually abolished, especially after the Enlightenment and the consolidation of human rights. Today, examples of the Pear of Anguish can be found in European torture museums, such as the Inquisition Museum in Carcassonne, France, and the Museo della Tortura in Italy. Some historians believe that not all displayed pieces are original, with some being later reproductions meant to symbolize medieval horror. Nevertheless, evidence suggests that devices with similar mechanisms were genuinely used in secret interrogation chambers. Regardless of its exact origin, the meaning remains the same. The Pear of Anguish represents the extreme of human cruelty. It demonstrates how humans transformed metal into an invasive instrument of torture that completely destroyed the dignity of its victim. Simply turning a crank was enough to elicit screams, rip bodies apart, and crush hope. Today, the artifact is studied not only for its historical value, but also as a symbol of how far brutality can reach when justified by faith or law. It reminds us that human suffering was once institutionalized, used with pride and religious justification. Looking at a Pear of Anguish is facing the darkest side of humanity, the capacity to feel pleasure or indifference at another's pain. Even centuries later, the emotional impact of this object remains powerful. It is almost impossible to observe it without imagining the iron creaking, the screams echoing in a dark cell, and the silence that followed when the body could no longer resist. The Pear of Anguish is more than a museum piece. It is a tangible reminder of how cruel humans can be when they believe they have the right to decide who deserves pain. It is proof that violence can be disguised as justice and that human history is marked by both ingenious inventions and instruments designed solely to destroy. This artifact remains a symbol of barbarity, a warning of corrupted power and the absence of empathy. Though inert behind cold glass, its meaning remains alive. The Pear of Anguish represents the muffled cries of thousands of forgotten victims, the echo of pain that time has not erased, and the reminder that the most real horrors are not in fictional tales but in the pages of human history itself.